still love it.
Hey, Dodson. Call the special Newport City Council meeting to order for Thursday, February 22nd, 2018, 4:30 p.m., City Council Room. All members of the council, with the exception of Mr. Shinet, are absent. Others include Laura Dogan, our city manager, and James Johnson, our clerk treasurer. Number 2 is to follow up on the agenda item of February 19th, 2018, corrective action against a public officer, 1 VSA 313, section 4. And I'd like to turn it over to the city attorney at this time, David Rue.
Hi, I'm David Rue from Stitzel, Page & Fletcher. As many of you are aware, on Monday night, the council acted to address a serious allegation regarding potential disclosure of executive session information and speaking and acting outside of the councilor's scope of authority. The council had a duty to address this allegation and tried to do so consistent with the open meeting law and provide the council member with some protection. It tried to address this in a confidential and professional manner with no intent to harm, but to get to the root of the problem. This information, or the allegation, came from a very reliable source, and understanding that after hearing from the counselor who was the subject of the allegation, upon further investigation, we discovered that the information came from less reliable sources than originally believed and came third hand. That's why we're here today. We want to put this matter to bed, and we did in fact seek more information after the original discussion. We're just holding this special meeting as quickly as possible to put this in perspective and resolve the matter. It would simply be a dereliction of duty for the council not to address the original allegation, which it did on Monday night, and after that it did some more digging and it found out that the information was not came from not as a reliable source as originally believed.
Do you want to take questions, sir? Public
I
comment?
mean, we can take public comment.
We'll take public comment.
Yeah.
We'll just take public comment. We're going to take public comment, and that'll be it. And I'm going to limit it to 1 minute each. And so,
I mean, I'm happy to answer questions if people would like that, but, you know.
just a second, I have someone over here first.
The information indirectly came via me. It came via a conversation that was certainly not as it was presented. I am part of a group called Men from Ego Community Maritime, and as you know, we've been dealing with that issue. We only had partial information. I wrote an email to a group of people on our board, which was about addressing this group. Somehow that got distorted along the way. What is really disturbing to the this fact, this group, because you are a, quote, heavyweight lawyer, what is really disturbing is nobody bothered to fact check. None of you. It was sent to an in-group. I don't even know how it got to the lawyers for the bank, but apparently it did. They didn't fact check, the bank didn't fact check, you didn't fact check. And it would have been really easy to ask me. The email that I wrote was badly written. I wrote it in a hurry and sent it. At the same time, it was Friday afternoon late, and there were a lot of other things happening. No excuse. I did not edit it. I should have done. So I can understand where some of the confusion came from, but why wouldn't you fact check? That's basic 101. Can you address that, please?
The information that we received came from a reliable source. I have no reason to doubt the honesty of the attorney with whom I spoke.
It's not about honesty. It's about fact-checking and interpretation.
Okay. Well, I understand your position on
So
that.
before you, Joe, I'll get to you, Joe. I'm going to hand over here, and then Diane Pio, then Ann Sherwell.
I
And
think
then
that
Joe, then Robin.
even bringing the subject up before there was any confirmation, there was, like, as Pam said, based on gossip, was extremely irresponsible. And damage has since been done because there were prejudicial headlines that appeared in the newspaper that might give the public even the title of the meeting would give the public the idea that some wrong had been committed. So you have already caused a great deal of harm just by the information that was posted already. And retracting it, I don't know what good that's going to do.
No, Joe,
sorry.
behind you, then you, at
Okay,
the
fine,
end. Yeah, at Ann, then Joe, then Robin.
I practiced law for about 32 years, and one of the first things we ever learned was that hearsay on hearsay on hearsay was not admissible in a court of law generally because it was totally unreliable. And the only person that a judge would allow to testify to something was a person who had firsthand knowledge of something. No one, I'm sure the rules in Vermont aren't any different from the rules in Pennsylvania, no one was ever accused of a crime or anything based on hearsay, because everyone from the law student up, from the 7-year-old up, knows that you can't rely on a statement made by somebody else who heard it from somebody else who heard it from somebody else, because it's not the last person, the first person who speaks to you, who might be very reliable, who you trust, that it's dependent on. That person's going to sound like he's telling the truth. It's where it came from. So I'm really shocked that anybody would allow an accusation of one of our respected city councilmen who stands for the proposition of having things out in the open, being reliable, being truthful. I find it outrageous. And I think the people on this council who understand the words hearsay, I'm sure after all these years, and who pushed this forward without finding out the facts, and that's the city manager as far as I'm concerned, and the mayor, owe not only a huge apology to Julie Raboyne, all of you owe that to her, but you two should think about resigning. That's atrocious behavior on your part. I don't want you representing me anymore.
But what I can say to that is that at the time it was not known to be hearsay.
It came from someone else.
It came from the bank's attorney, who said it came from her client.
That's hearsay.
Period. No, that's speaking from an attorney speaking to her client. That's not necessarily hearsay. Now, I apologize that this was brought so quickly, and I apologize to Julie that this was brought so quickly before council. It was a serious matter, however, that needed to be addressed. We did not know at the time that it was hearsay from an email. We didn't know that. It was never presented as such to us. Should we have investigated that further? Sure.
Did you hear how it was
Excuse
presented?
me, let him, let him finish, please.
Should we have investigated that further? In hindsight, yes. So I apologize for that. As the city's attorney, we should have looked at that and paid careful attention to where that allegation had come from and done further digging. But given the seriousness of the matter and the timing, we thought it important to inform our client of what was happening.
I've got Joe and then Robin. Just a reminder, if you do wish to speak, please address me. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to be clear as to the meaning of the city attorney's statement. Is what he's saying that he's discovered the information was not only from a less than reliable source, but in fact inaccurate?
I don't know whether the information was true or not, but it is from a less reliable source, and we have to trust the counselor and take her at her word.
Mr. Mayor, I believe council people are allowed to speak before the public.
Yes, I'm just, yeah.
There were direct quotes in that letter saying that I told someone at the bank that the city was going to call the electric utility. That is pretty specific.
That's not, it wasn't a direct quote. in the email, but I was informed that the counselor said that the city was going to call the bank, not you. What the communication said was that you had told the bank that the city was going to turn off the electricity.
None of that is true.
Fair enough, and that's why we're here today, and I apologize to you for not investigating further and not discovering that it was, came from a third or fourth or fifth party down the line.
Thank you.
Could I just follow up?
Yeah, and then I'll go around.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I just want to go back for a second because I think I heard a different answer to my question, which is when Ms. Raboin said that she did not speak to the bank, the city attorney said, fair enough. Is that an acknowledgement of the truth of her statement? That she did not talk to the bank, which was what was in the letter?
If she says she didn't talk to the bank, then yes, you have to take her at her word.
That's not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm
No,
just
you're
making
next,
sure it's
Robbie.
me.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I know you were taking notes, I wanted to go to you next.
So, Mr. Mayor, I've covered council meetings, city, school boards, meetings of all kinds where people complaints happen about things discussed outside of executive session. I have never heard of something that went so quickly to a corrective action meeting on the agenda like that, in a circumstance like this where the issue that came up was resolved by the attorney before it got to the city manager and you, and then to the council and everybody else. So my question is, I guess my question is to the city manager, the mayor, and the attorney, is this the only way to resolve a question of whether somebody might have talked about something out of school? Isn't there another way to address it? It came up that, you could have asked me if I said it, and couldn't we have somebody talked about it? It seemed like my thought was it went immediately to DEFCON 1 about something that was already resolved. So my question is, what is the city policy about something like this that got resolved, but there's still questions? A contract was signed, the boat's safe, which we all found out about later. So my question is to the city manager, to you, to the council as a whole, and to the attorney, what are the policies for handling concerns like this? Because I've never seen anything like this before. So that's why I'm asking this question. And you can answer them one at a time or as you wish.
I'm gonna take a stab.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we got the information, we looked at the public meeting law because we knew we needed to have a conversation with the parties at hand, the people that were mentioned. We thought the best way to do it, using the most discretion, using respect, would be to do it in executive session because that's what the statute allowed. So we did some research and we thought that that would be the way to get the details of who, what, where, when, and how without this going from this, as we had indicated, corrective action against a public officer. We had this statute, and it doesn't say who, it doesn't say anything. It could have been a public officer from East Oshkosh. And we were intending to have that very conversation that would allow due process, would allow appreciative inquiry, and we probably would have come away from it with the same information that we have today. I'm certain if we were in executive session, you would have asked us to dig deeper. We would have done that. We would have come to the same resolution, and it would not have been out in the public. So honoring Julie's choice to put it out in the public, there was no opportunity for council members to deliberate amongst themselves and come to that conclusion. So we do the best we can with the tools that we have available. And here we are today, right?
here we are today. And as far as my take on it, when I got the call Friday, and then I chatted with the city attorney and the city manager, it was decided to have it as an executive session to talk about it Monday night. Because I wanted to resolve it as quickly as possible, because I knew we had the contract discussion coming up regarding the boat. And I just wanted to have it resolved, and I mean, had no idea at the time. I mean, the city attorney had a phone call from another attorney representing the people we were negotiating with. And, you know, I looked at it as, well, it's gotta be something serious. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a lay person. When they call me at work, and as I said before, Monday, I don't get called at work very often, and so that's my take on it, is that the attorney called the city manager, who called me, and then I asked for a conference call with the attorney, because we were on a conference call, because I wanted to try to find out more of what was going on. And then at that time, knowing that we were going to be talking about the contract, once again, I'm repeating myself, with the Northern Star at the meeting Monday night, I just wanted to have it resolved, and that's my take on it. And for the other comment, I'm going to publicly say I'm not going to resign.
Are you going to apologize?
Let's finish.
Well, it's not.
Excuse me, you need to address, I'm going to have other people speak first, because you've already spoken. We have hands up over here. But first, I think, you want to answer the question to anything?
I think Laura gave the appropriate response.
Okay.
I did ask if the council, other members of the council wish to address that, the policy of how it was handled. That, I'm not talking about personal feelings, I'm talking about policy.
I don't think we even have a written policy, do we, on this? We followed statute.
Exactly.
We followed statute. We don't have an actual written policy.
Was this your attorney's recommendation to use this language? Did you check with the
I
Vermont
would
League of
advise you
Cities
not to
and
answer
Towns?
that question.
I'm sorry, I was talking and I didn't hear your answer. I apologize.
I said I'm going to advise counsel not to answer that question,
Uh,
because it's attorney-client privilege information that you're seeking.
Well, somebody recommended using this particular,
You're seeking the content, you're asking a question about the contents of a conversation that I've had with my clients.
yes. I mean, I'm assuming that you
That's
made that
it.
recommendation. Okay, then, can you answer that question, Mr. Mayor? Was the recommendation to handle it this way made by your city attorney?
It's a conversation I had with the attorney.
It came up in conversation.
I said I had a conversation with the attorney. But I'm not going to talk about what I discussed.
Well, was it your, so I'm trying to get the answer to the question. I'm sorry I'm taking other
We
people's time,
followed,
but
we
it's an
followed,
important
we
question to
followed
ask.
state statute. I'm a believer in following state statute, and that's what was in state statute. It's the way I look at it.
But somebody pointed you to it, or you knew that that was the right way to do it. That's the question. Who knew that it was the right way to handle it? Did you ask for the League of Cities and Towns idea? That's what I'm asking. And I don't know why it's of concern if the attorney recommended it. It's a recommendation, it's not an issue, really. I mean, he doesn't have to answer, but you're the client, you can answer.
I'm choosing not to, because I believe in some confidential attorney-client.
But then, would you answer that, Laura, as the city manager?
On the advice of our attorney, I'm not going to.
So you acted on advice from someone that you can't say who told you? And that's your answer to the council and to the public at this point?
Our attorney is in the room, and our attorney has advised us that that is attorney-client
But I
privilege.
think you're making assumptions that are outside of what the responses to your inquiries were.
I'm asking simply who recommended that that was the best way to handle the situation. That's all.
Yep, and I think that I've advised the council not to answer that question.
Why, though?
because the answer is attorney-client confidential communications.
But your confidential communications to Laura about the problem at hand was read out in public on Monday night.
That was released, correct.
Sure. So what
At the-
difference
at
was
the-
that?
At the client's choosing. And right now, they're choosing to follow the
So-
attorney's advice.
And was it your advice that that email message be read out at the public council meeting? Same situation right now. Mr. Mayor.
I mean, I think it's clear that that email was attorney-client confidential communication.
Sure.
And the client waived the confidentiality for that particular communication.
So
The
I'm
client
asking.
has not waived it for others.
So I'm asking why, this is a pure policy discussion about handling a concern over somebody talking out of executive session. It's even less critical than what was read out Monday night. My question again is, who recommended that this was the way to handle a discussion about conversation outside of executive session? And if you don't tell the members of the public, are you going to tell the council? And when are you going to do that? Mr. Mayor? And if you don't, why not?
I had a conversation with the city attorney.
Thank you.
Hold on, we've got a lot of hands up. I'm trying to figure out. Hold on.
Diane.
Is it Colleen, then Diane, and then Rick, and then, okay, Ken's here too. We've got a lot of hands up. Thank you for trying to help me out on this. Okay, Colleen, and then Diane, then Rick, then Ken, and then we go to Ed.
I wonder, Mr. Mayor, if there is a less expensive attorney or practice that the city could use that would check sources.
No idea. No idea as far as attorneys then. That is something that the council can decide.
I'm personally thankful that Julie wanted to have this come out in the open because I think that if it had just been a meeting held with that kind of prejudicial title to it, corrective action, we would never, as a member of the public, I would never have known how irresponsible it was of the city council to go forward with something without, basically based on gossip. Any reasonable person doesn't do that. So the fact that that happened, I'm glad that Julie brought that out because now we know that you know what kind of things are going on. So thank you, Julie. Appreciate it.
So, unless I'm missing something, no one is refuting that information came to the bank stating that the electricity would be turned off from the boat. No one is saying that that didn't happen. I don't know how that information would have gotten to somebody because my understanding was what I'm hearing is that it was discussed in executive session. So someone would have had to reveal that. So I mean, that's to me the elephant in the room that nobody's asking a question about.
I'd like to address that.
I'm going to go to Ed Barber first.
I'm gonna just ask.
Excuse me, I will get to you in a minute. He had his hand up next, and that's how I'm doing it, in the order that people have hands up.
My question to you, Mr. Mayor, is because you set the agenda, if you knew in advance that Julie would have had this put in a public session instead of executive session, would it have been an agenda item?
It probably still would have been an agenda, because it's that important.
Thank you.
And then Ken,
I think the whole thing was handled wrong. And either lawyer that gave you the information without talking to Julie first should know better. Plain and simple. I weren't here Monday night, but if it was even mentioned in any way, shape, or form of what was going on, it never should have been done. I don't want to know the information that the lawyer said. You should have got together with us, with Laura, and you should have talked to her first, and then checked into the source and then proceeded from there. A person has been hurt, and I hope she's been apologized for the remarks that were made. Now, again, whichever lawyer is telling you to act the way you did, you better check city policy, because if the paper stated right, you said whatever goes on in executive session, there's nothing prohibiting them from saying it anyways. So I don't know what the big deal is, but I would check before I take steps like this again.
I think that's been stated by the attorney and by that the things will be checked. But I'd like to reiterate, if I may, there is a sense of trust when you're in an executive session that when you're discussing contracts or real estate or personnel, that it stays there. There's no law against it. You can, talk about whatever you want outside of an executive session, and there's nothing that says you can't. But when you're in an executive session talking contracts or personnel or real estate, you're hoping that it stays there. And I'm going to say it once again. I mean, I went on the facts from the credit union's attorney. And, you kind of have to look at that. When you get something that's from the credit union's attorney, you kind of have to look at that as something serious. And so that's why I rely on our city attorney to advise, and that's how come it made the agenda and the way it was handled. Is because, I mean, when you get something from the other attorney, you have to, I mean, I don't know, if I get a call from another attorney for a client, I'd assume that.
Attorneys have a duty of candor and trustworthiness.
Right, that's what I was trying, yeah.
So they cannot lie, and you have to take them at their word. And that's what we were relying on.
Right, and that's, thank you for trying to say it better than I can, but
Did he check it, did the other attorney check into the information?
She received the information from her client, and because it was of a serious, the allegation that the city would turn off the electricity was serious, she contacted me to make sure that that was not the case.
He should have checked the information first. You did, he did. Then he's not worth a powder blown to hell as a lawyer.
okay. Pam?
How did the information get out there?
The electricity had been off. Whether that was because it was turned off, a fuse had blown, or whatever, the electricity had been off. And that was confirmed the other night. That had nothing to do with an executive session. I know nothing about an executive session, and I care even less. The electricity had been off. That was an issue of concern for the board, who was really concerned about the bubbler, which is the thing that stops the water freezing. We'd already been told to move the bubbler. Now you tell me how that's going to happen. And that came as a letter. The electricity had been off, correct?
No.
Well,
I don't know.
you think that there may be a distinction here that's not being recognized. There's a difference between turning the electricity off at the meter and terminating electric service, which is what the city was accused of doing.
Nobody was accusing anybody of doing anything. And that has nothing to do with the way this was handled the other night. It was a lynching, what happened in here. The mayor pitched a fit, and Laura, you said some awful things to Julie with no evidence and no question. You didn't ask, you attacked. Both of you did.
I'm going to go to Colleen, then Joe, then Ann, and I think we're going to wrap it up.
I'd like to say something, but I'll wait my turn.
Oh, okay, good.
Mr. Mayor, I think it would be appropriate for the approximate cost to the city of all of this legal attorney's fees be reimbursed somehow, because I believe they resulted from a faulty process, and putting that out there. that there's a cost associated with having an attorney sitting in this room, and that cost is not something that we, the taxpayers, should bear.
Actually, I'm gonna let Penny go. I'm gonna let Penny go, and then, because
Sure, I'm gonna
I
see
don't
you
mind.
here.
no, I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna give everyone a chance first, and because
Newport is at a wonderful tipping point to grow and thrive. We need all of our good people on board. And from what I've heard, damage has been done to Julie's reputation, Julie Radlin's reputation. This is not the way we want to proceed as a team. I'm concerned that Julie has been maligned in the press. And we need Julie and you and James and Laura and John and James to work as a team. And I'm worried about trust. I'm worried about going forward and functioning as a team, as we have so many good efforts. Newport, everybody was there last night. And I would hope that this team, on behalf of the citizens of Newport, could come to some sort of, I don't know if an apology is necessary. You know, once damage is, I've heard executive action, I've heard wrongdoing, and I don't know if an apology. Has there been any, have you been made whole at all from the damage that's been done? I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Rue has apologized.
Well, I would look to the healthy functioning of this team to have some sort of coming together on behalf of the citizens that you serve as we go forward to build this community into a thriving community, not one that throws barbs that don't have to be thrown.
And I think that's why we're here today,
Well,
to get this matter resolved and to move on. Because I understand it's difficult for everyone to hear. And, you know, there's misinformation out there, and we'd like to put that to bed, and be done with it, and move on with city business as usual.
I'm gonna let.
I have a couple things. Question to you, Mr. Mayor. We talked about executive session, and Mr. Boyne put something out that was said in executive session. At Monday's meeting, you stated that this topic was not even discussed in executive session. So I find it very confusing how she could be stated to do something, and then you say that it wasn't even discussed in executive session. So that's confusing to me, very confusing, and I don't know where the error is, but there's a contradiction there. Secondly, and then please, sir. Secondly, is it normal for you as a lawyer, sir, and for you as a board to hear an accusation, whether it's from the lawyer or the President of the United States, I don't care who it's from, and say, oh, you know what? Guilty. Is that how we operate? Is that the judicial process that you learned? I don't believe so. I don't believe so. And what has been done here has waylaid and taken law and due process to a level that is barbaric, in my opinion. Thank you.
I think I'll take the second one first. What was made was an allegation. It was not taken as fact, and that's why we're here today. Because she was entitled to respond to that allegation. She responded, and it turned out that what we heard was not true. Plain and simple, that's it. Nobody's going to jail, nobody is being sued over
Excuse
this.
me,
The
it's
whole
not
point
that
of this
it,
hearing,
sir.
the whole point of this hearing is to address the issue and put the matter to bed. I apologize to Councilor Boyd. I was acting on reliable information that I was given that turned out not to be reliable. That's the reason for my apology, and that's why we're dealing with this today. Now, as to the first question, what gets discussed in executive session relates to the city's agreements with various parties, including the boat's owner and operator. The discussion of the city's relationship with the boat's owner and operator was what the allegation, the source of the allegation pertained to that, right? What Julie was accused of discussing outside to the boat, what she said to the bank related to the city's relationship with the boat's owner and operator, having to do with electric service for the boat.
Said to the bank. You've already, excuse me?
What Julie was alleged to have said to the bank
Okay, just checking.
had to do with electricity service of the boat. The subject of electricity service and the city's relationship with the boat's owner and operator is a matter for executive session and has been discussed in executive session.
I don't believe so. I mean,
You misunderstood.
Mr. Mayor was wrong.
I misunderstood him.
Mr. Evans, I believe you misunderstood the comment by the mayor. I'm not sure what you're talking about, but.
You stated at the meeting on Monday night, I believe when this was brought up, that this matter, specific matter, was not discussed in executive session.
The statement I was making was there was never any discussion about disconnecting the electrical meter. That is what I was stating.
That's true.
That was the only thing I was referencing, was there was never any discussion about ever pulling the meter, like what the credit union attorney had called Mr. Rue on. We had never discussed pulling the electrical meter, and that's what I was trying. Maybe I didn't make myself clear on that, but that's what it was
Can I
meant
ask
to
you
be.
a question? What was the allegation then? What was the allegation that was presented?
That Julie had threatened, well, not threatened, but Julie had told, the allegation was that Councilor Burgoyne had told the bank that the city was going to turn off the electric meter serving the bubblers.
Cool, and that was not discussed in the executive session, correct?
Correct, not
Okay,
once.
so now she is being summoned here and in public that she discussed something that was discussed in executive session. This is a farce.
I think that you're.
I
the
believe it's a
subject
farce,
is-
sir.
Okay, you're
I
entitled to
believe
your
it's a
belief.
farce, and until you can prove to me that you have the witnesses and you have people backing it up, this is a farce.
I would just like to say that I hope that our city, our mayor and our city manager will begin, and our city council will begin to look at some policy on how to address situations like this. My personal belief is that on Friday, when all of this came out, that there should and probably could have been a conversation with Councilperson Rabowen, that it was remiss to put it in your minutes for the executive session for Monday night, leaving her 3 days to think about it without any recourse, without any chance of finding out what happened, that it could have been addressed better. And I really do hope that the city council, city manager, mayor, and our attorney will look at some sort of policy. I do think it was handled very poorly.
My hope would be that there is an agreed party here, and it seems like from tonight's meeting that it's clear that there is an agreed party, and that I hope one of the ways of resolving this is that the agreed party, Julie, determines what makes amends for the harm that was done in this incident. And maybe that can be stated tonight or some other time, but I think the way to move forward, as you suggest, is that the damages done need to be identified and amends need to be made, whatever that list of grievances may be. But I hope that you will convey to the board and the public what does make amends for the harm caused.
Actually, I'd like to answer that now, if I may. Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to sit here for 10 minutes and yell at you like you did to me on Monday night and try to shame you. You made a mistake. Laura made a huge mistake. I think the only elephant in the room is that if this allegation had been made against any other city councilor, would it have been handled the same way? I don't think so. I'm not going to presume to know what was going on in anyone's minds or what the motives were, but it is shameful. However, I am not going to want to drag this on. I do want to put it to bed as well. I don't want to punish anybody. An apology from the two of you would be awesome. However, if it's not genuine, don't bother. I would like to bury the hatchet. I would like to be able to operate in a way that Penny stated, where there's a level of trust and communication, where everybody can feel like we're working as a team and serving our constituents, not having these ridiculous witch hunt arguments. I don't know if that's all I will want for reparation. I thank you for bringing the reparative voice to the table, Walter. I think Colleen's point about the waste of money, I can't imagine how many hundreds of dollars we're charging the taxpayers in legal fees for something that could have been resolved for free. Well, almost for free. I'm sure Mr. Rue would have needed to do a little bit of research, but we didn't need to come here. We could have resolved it offline. And I appreciate the support. The damage has been done. I am also glad that it was not an executive session, because as somebody said, I think it's really important that the public sees the way this operation has been handled and demands we do better. Thank you.
I'm not in line. I'll wait.
I saw your hand first.
Wait, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
I saw your hand first.
I'm getting confused.
So please go.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I saw your hand first.
No,
then.
I find myself wondering, as a civically active person, there's an election coming up. And we've had headlines in the paper about potential wrongdoing of someone who's completely innocent. And, sir, you talk about I don't know what we do to publicly exonerate someone who's been falsely accused, and it's been all over the papers. And we have an election coming up of people who are going to represent the city, represent me and us in the city when we're doing so many good things. And I'm wondering what can be done. I would wonder about your ideas about what could be done to correct this publicly before the election. Because I looked at the headline and I thought, my gosh, what has Julie done? Yeah, Laura.
So, Julie, I'm sorry to put you through this. This was not the intent. And the intent was to handle this in the way that the statute allowed, which was executive session. Again, the way that it was titled did not call anybody specifically out. The intent was to allow due process, appreciative inquiry. There was no intent to cause harm. There was no intent to put anybody through this. Beyond that, we're here because Julie requested that this be in public, and we honored that. And that's why we wanted to resolve this as quickly as possible. So today's Thursday. This was the soonest we could get a special meeting so that we could have this conversation. and deal with this in the manner that was the best way we could, given the tools that we have and given what the statute and the public meeting law allows. So other than that, we're here, everybody's trying to take the high road. We're allowing public comment so that you can get this off your chest. And I appreciate the sentiment that you stated about working as a team, and we do have amazing things going on in the city. So being able to resolve this as quickly as possible is the intent of tonight's meeting.
I'm going to say this. This is the first time in 17 years, whenever we have executive session, it's always said personnel issue. But this one here went to a public official, corrective action against a public official. I can't even consider telling newspapers how to write articles. But one of them, the next day I about cracked. You looked at that, and it was like you told the whole world that it's against a public official, and there's your picture.
Yeah, right.
I've had probably 50 people talk to me in the last few days, said, is she guilty? Because that paper there basically said she's guilty as hell. I can't tell the newspaper, but I think going forward, other than from the council, I think that one newspaper ought to be slapping the biggest headlines that Newport has ever seen, stating that we were wrong and we apologize for it, because there's still a lot of people out there, they read that paper and it's gospel truth. And they've got this person is guilty. And that's all I've got to say. But to go forward, to make some corrective actions, yes, we can apologize, but there's a newspaper that can correct a heck of a lot of this in a hurry, prior to an election, saying, we were wrong, but internally, if it said personnel issue, it would have never gone, you would have never seen the picture in the newspaper.
We supplied as much information as we have.
Unfortunately, this isn't a personnel issue, so you can't warrant that. Councilor Boyne is not an employee of the city.
I won't even go there with you.
Fair enough.
I've said all I need to say. I think going forward, there can be some real healing fast.
Yeah.
But then again, I can't tell the media how to write their articles.
Dan Kutter, Bell Program. Out of all the things I've been hearing so far, it seems like everybody is pretty clear that things did not go well. And what is concerning me the most is the erosion of trust in the entire council. Things should not have gone this way. The public, those of us in the room and outside the building, need to know that the council is operating on our best interest. And it seems like that may not be what's really going on. And that's a problem. The problem now, Roland, lays back onto the council to figure out what it is that you're going to do to establish a working relationship among each other that lets the rest of us know that you are looking out for us instead of trying to get at each other. The council does not have to all agree. We don't want you all to agree because groupthink is a bad thing. So I'm encouraged that there is dissent, but there needs to be dissent with logical argument, not mudslinging. Now, based on the criteria laid out for the public meeting, it would seem that there's room for improvement. Article 7, please do not interrupt or mock other speakers or otherwise exhibit disruptive behavior during the city council meeting. The council broke your own rule. Consider that. Figure out your plan of action. Figure out what it takes to do your job.
All right, I'm gonna wrap it up.
Real quick, just one thing.
I wanna wrap it up, because they have to go to the high school. I wanna respect their time.
Go over there and grill him then.
Oh, no, there's a debate, they have to all go to the high school. But I want to wrap it up and summarize. First of all, I do want to apologize. Probably I overreacted in a way, but I have to base it upon what's presented to me, and it was wrong. And for that, I'm sorry. I am sorry. But I'm going to be very blunt and honest here. If it had been someone else, I probably would have done the same thing based upon what was presented. I really would have. I believe in following things, you know, and that's how I am. I just try to follow things, and I don't pick or choose anybody. Mr. Wilson, who I've worked with for, I can't remember how many years now. 17. If something had been, I would have done the same thing to him. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to, I'm going to get tongue-tied now. But I don't pick and choose. I try to do the things the best I can. I'm very firm believer in statute, things like that. I try to follow executive sessions the way they do, things like that. And I think we all do need to try to work better together. There has been dissension amongst members, and I think we do need to try to work together. We may not always agree, but I think for the future of the community, we need to try to. We've got issues over there. You know, we had a great Newport last night, and I thought there was a ton of enthusiasm at that meeting last night. And so I'm not afraid to say, well, probably I moved too quick, but it's just, it's over, I hope. I hope we can move forward from this point. That's what I had to say.
Thank you.
Anything else? Then I think we need to adjourn. Can you see that? 5:20?
5:25. Yeah, 5:25.
So we need to adjourn at 5:25.
Need a motion, Mr. Mayor, I
Yes.
make a motion we adjourn to 17:25 or 5:25.
17:25, okay, a motion's made.
I'll second.
Made and seconded, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries.
17.
Come up with the debate.